day I wake up is another blessing. Thankful every second, getting God's protection. I lost connection in the desert, I had no reception. But in that time alone, I probably learned 1,000 lessons. I used my time for introspection and some self-reflection, and analyzed a couple ways to conquer my depression. Everything doesn't happen the way we plan it to, but if we harvest energy, then we can plan it too. So take a look in my eyes, that's where the...
Alright, we are back with another reaction here. Spawn Wave once again. Sony says Xbox will sabotage PlayStation. Sony being over dramatic again. Trying to block the Xbox acquisition of the Activision Blizzard. You know what I'm saying? Let's see what Sony's saying. Trying to block this thing from happening.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's finally happening. I feel like right now, Sony is kind of on their back foot when it comes to the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft. Of course, this has been going on since January of last year, but recently a lot has sort of been happening because we are getting closer and closer to that expected month for this entire thing to close, that being June. At least that's the estimation Microsoft gave a while ago now. But Sony is starting to say some weird things that has me thinking they're kind of spinning around a bit, and maybe we'll have to take that 10-year deal because as we've gone along, they've kind of been left almost on an island as the opposition against
everybody else was like,
we're going to take a look at some of the
Sony's the
latest
only
back
one.
And forth here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and
they are hating. Ultimate haters right now is what's going on. They're the ultimate haters right now. Just let it go through. Just let it go through, man.
Subscribe if you're new here to the Spawn Wave Plus channel. Let's head over here, though, to the Verge. Just based on some new information that's come out from the UK, the regulator there, talking about Sony, and again, back and forth between Microsoft and Sony, with Microsoft attempting to really appease regulators to try to get the deal approved and through. And really, I feel like as soon as one of the larger regulators approves it, the other regulators will probably most likely look at that and say, okay, well, we'll maybe get this moving along too. So that's kind of why I think right now we're going to start to see this accelerate going towards June, as there's already been reports that in the EU is most likely going to be approving this deal here soon.
Yes,
but this is Sony's latest argument, and there's...
Listen, to be honest, I just want this to go through so I could have World of Warcraft on Game Pass. That's it. And Call of Duty. Kind of. Not really, but just Warcraft. You know what I mean?
Some funny stuff to consider, really. But Sony is worried that Microsoft will sabotage Call of Duty for the PlayStation. Okay. So the idea here is the deal goes through. Microsoft, of course, would be in charge of Activision because they would own them, who would be developing Call of Duty. And Microsoft is promising a lot in terms of where Call of Duty will be available, even going as far as to say there will be a version of Call of Duty on the Switch. And they had some more stuff to talk about.
I would love to see how they're going to make that happen. I want to see how Call of Duty's going to run on the Switch. That's going to be hilarious. Unless they're talking about like Call of Duty mobile type thing.
But we'll cover that a bit more in Newswave tomorrow, so make sure you check that out, 8 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. But
a Nintendo Switch version of Call of Duty mobile.
I think this is Tom Warren, who, yes, it's from Tom Warren, but we can see the documentation here from the latest set of paperwork, and some of the stuff was redacted. Again, we'll talk about that, but Microsoft might release a PlayStation version of Call of Duty where bugs and errors emerge only on the game's final level or after later updates. This is from Sony in response to Microsoft, who has kept saying that they will keep the version of Call of Duty on PlayStation in parity with Microsoft in terms of content, releases, etc. They say even if such degradations could be swiftly detected, any remedy would likely come too late, by which time the gaming community would have lost confidence in
Wait a minute. Wasn't Sony accused of doing that exact same thing on some games?
PlayStation as a go-to venue to play Call of Duty. Indeed, as Modern Warfare 2 attests, Call of Duty is most often purchased in just the first few weeks of release, which that's common for basically any game, as you see them show up on sales charts, with the most transparent one being in Japan. But even in like the UK, where we have the numbered placements, we always hear about a 60% drop off from just the first to the second week, and then we see these releases tend to peter out, fall out of the top 10, and kind of kick around in there, and then maybe even fall further out of the top 20. Occasionally you have those evergreen titles that just don't make any sense, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or Grand Theft Auto 5. But it's more common than not to see these games kind of just slowly fall off over time, with the majority of their stuff selling immediately right out of the gate. Says if it became known that the game's performance on PlayStation was worse than on Xbox, Call of Duty gamers could decide to switch to Xbox for fear of playing their favorite game at a second-class or less competitive venue. So,
fam, unless that's the only game people play, they're not gonna switch consoles. And if it is, that's crazy. But like, they're not gonna switch from a PlayStation to the Xbox just to play Call of Duty, unless they already have an Xbox. Like, let's be for real. Most people aren't gonna do that. They'll just deal with it on PlayStation. It's not like everyone and their mama is trying to be, well, that's how it feels like nowadays, trying to be a esports competitor or something. But like, come on.
It's interesting. I saw some people on Twitter, other social media, say, how would Sony come up with this hypothetically? Since there has been speculation, and to my knowledge, I've never seen any definitive proof that Sony has actually done this. Just the end result of games just running better on the PS5 than the Xbox. And that has been something consistently happening, to the point where when I was on the Xbox 2+1 podcast the other week, which was a fun show, that was a topic that was discussed. Like, why is this happening? Where Xbox, which on paper is more powerful than the PS5, specifically when it comes down to teraflops and all of this, but for some reason, these games keep running better, and we hear about the marketing deals in place with some of those games. But even Atomic Heart, which was, I mean, we saw Microsoft do the entire Game Pass deal with them and handle some of the marketing, ran better on the PlayStation. And, it is hard to say because, well, I'm not a developer using those tools, but that is something that's been brought up. The tool set available, SDKs, those sorts of things that help to optimize, and, of course, just the overall developer workflow could more or less favor Sony with what they have provided compared to Microsoft with their 2 SKU approach, Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X. But in essence, Sony is saying...
So why would you accuse them of maybe doing something in the future that you might be doing right now, that people are bringing up in videos right now? Like, do people not know how the internet works yet in 2023? Because it baffles me sometimes. Like, for real.
Saying that Microsoft would purposely sabotage Call of Duty on the PlayStation and have gamers go over to the better running version on the Xbox. Because I will tell you, with a game like Call of Duty, performance is key, and you don't want frame drops all over the place when you're doing multiplayer. They even turn down the visual fidelity in multiplayer to ensure that you have a more or less locked frame rate, especially because it is considered, more competitive style and all of those sorts of things. So if you're on PlayStation and this thing's dropping frames all over the place, you're going to look for a better option. And if you're not going to PC, I guess you're going to Xbox. They do bring up the idea, though, that this could be something that would play into the marketing, like plays best on Xbox, which, again, Microsoft is going to push the marketing heavily whenever they...
Yo, fam, imagine just being that petty. Plays best on Xbox. Yo, you dropping frames on PlayStation all over the place. I don't know why. It's not our fault. All I know is it plays best on Xbox.
do acquire Activision Blizzard. At this point, I think it's kind of inevitable now. And what we're seeing from Sony is just them more or less posturing for negotiation's sake when it comes to the deal that they inevitably sign with Microsoft. A stipulation could be that you can't purposely sabotage Call of Duty for the Xbox versus PlayStation or any of that. And that'll be left up to interpretation, because they could just say, hey, we're trying to hit 120 FPS on both systems, and the Xbox can just maybe handle it a bit better with their current SDK or anything there, right? So I think it's more or less going to be, it can't be horrible in terms of optimization all of a sudden overnight with the next release. You have to do your best to keep it within reason for overall performance parity. Now, the other part of this does bring up the idea of Game Pass, and I still think that is something that Sony is very concerned about. The idea of Call of Duty going into Game Pass without them getting a fair shot to add Call of Duty into their own subscription service. Here's the problem, though, and it's something I thought about immediately. Sony's not getting Call of Duty in their PlayStation Plus premium or extra subscription fee for free. It's not going to just appear and Microsoft's going to give it to them. There would be negotiating going on for that as well. And the way I understand it, how this would work, there's like an estimated amount of copies you would expect to sell as a publisher. And when Microsoft would approach you about your game.
Okay, this is interesting. I've always wanted to know how this kind of works with the game stuff going to Game Pass and stuff first. So let me run it back a little bit.
Expect to sell as a publisher. And when Microsoft would approach you about your game going to Game Pass, or you approach them, you have a number in mind, and then you guys kind of go back and forth and come up with an amount that would essentially cover that. Because you figure a lot of people are going to opt to download it through Game Pass rather than outright buy it as they would without that entry into Game Pass. And how many copies of Call of Duty do you think sell on PlayStation? Well, I can tell you it's a lot. If Call of Duty is selling anywhere from 20 to 25 million, which is a pretty consistent figure even for some of the less interesting entries, something like Call of Duty Vanguard.
Okay, so they go like the developers like, oh, we're projected to make this much, and then they'll negotiate about that price. Maybe they'll probably pad it a little bit. Oh, we're projected to make whatever. You know what I mean? And then they'll negotiate, try to get the price they want. My question is, after, say, they reach the amount of downloads that price equals to, and it keeps getting downloaded after that, what do they get? Any extra money after that? Is what I want to know. But I guess it's for as long as it's on Game Pass. I don't know.
You think half of those are selling on PlayStation? Maybe more than half? That's between PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Is Sony going to be able to cover 10 million copies? Because here they say it wouldn't make any sense at all. In fact, the quote is, they say, would commercially destroy Sony Interactive Entertainment's SIE multi-game subscription business model.
What?
It would just cost way too much. And I think those are the two big factors.
Oh, if they were to pay to put it on there, yeah, it would.
One, they're trying to negotiate clearly.
The
big thing,
they're gonna rob you. They sticking y'all up. Oh, y'all want to put Call of Duty on your subscription thingy majiggy thing? Oh yeah, sure. Just give us $1 billion.
Here it would be the marketing that Microsoft will absolutely take advantage of, and two, it's going to come down to the situation around Game Pass getting some of these big titles. Because while we are talking about Call of Duty, Diablo 4 would go right into it. So you're also considering things coming out of Blizzard as well as Activision. But Call of Duty is something that Sony is not going to front the money for to get into their service. And they're concerned if Game Pass has it, people will switch from PlayStation to Xbox. And that's something I completely understand. I think most of us do. Even though Microsoft is trying to downplay that idea, it's hard to argue with the value there if Call of Duty is going into a $15 a month, like the Game Pass Ultimate subscription service every year. And then you also have all of the older Call of Duties in there immediately. Like, that library grows considerably. I mean, almost overnight, or probably a month or two, because they'll have to get stuff set up for Game Pass and all the things in the back end. But consider all the Activision Blizzard stuff that would just show up in Game Pass, and it just makes that value proposition for the consumer even better and even harder to believe when you really look at it. But that's, to me, this is just Call of Duty being the big thing that's focused on right now, and Sony doing everything they can to posture and negotiate for a deal that inevitably is going to go through, and then want to get something signed and conceded to them from Microsoft. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below, especially the idea of Xbox sabotaging Sony's version of the game. Do you think Sony knows this from experience, as people were bringing up, or are they just kind of pulling a hypothetical out as a just in case? So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.
This is crazy, man. This is crazy, man. I mean, I get it. Call of Duty makes you a lot of money, Sony. I get it. It makes you a lot of money. Well, then you should have bought Activision Blizzard when you had the chance. You did. Yeah, what do you guys think? Sony being a bunch of bleeps? Thought I was gonna say it. I wasn't gonna say it. You thought I was gonna say it. I said bleep. You think they being a bunch of bleeps? I think they're being a bunch of bleeps. I think I just want all my Blizzard games on Game Pass, honestly. What do you guys think about the situation? Because right now it looks like it's either sign the Microsoft deal and get Call of Duty for 10 years, or you might not get Call of Duty at all. I don't know. What do you guys think? Tell me down below in the comments. Argue it out. Which one's better? PlayStation or Xbox? I don't care. Remember, link to this video in the description. Go show Spawnwave some love. Give them a like. Give them a subscribe if you want to keep up with your gaming news and such. I will see y'all next time. Deuces.
I'm hiding out, wilding out, cooling down, collecting thoughts till I find my route. And if they catch me, they'll be finding out what I'm about. Until then, I'm riding out. I'm hiding out, wilding out, cooling down, collecting thoughts till I find my route. And if they catch me, they'll be finding out what I'm about. Until then, I'm riding out, riding out. Check it out. I'm a desperado, I'm living it in real life. What's next to follow? I hit the bottle.